Hey everyone, welcome to Speak Like a Native. I'm Maya.
And I'm Leo. And Maya, I have to say, I am so excited for today's episode. I've been waiting for this one
Ha ha ha. Oh, really? Why is that, Leo?
because I love sports. Back home in Mexico, football, soccer, is everything. My whole family watches every game together. So when I came to the US and people started asking me about football, I thought, ooh, great, I know football. But then I said something like, I like to watch football, and the guy just smiled and changed the topic. I felt so awkward.
Okay, I can already guess what happened. Can you tell me exactly what you said?
I said, I like to watch football on weekends. Pretty simple, right?
Haha, it is simple, but that's exactly the problem. When you say I like to watch football, it sounds like someone who has never actually been part of American sports culture. It sounds basic, textbook. A native speaker would almost never say that sentence alone in a real conversation.
Wait, really? So what should I say instead?
That's what today is all about. We're going to teach you 3 phrases that make you sound like you actually know American sports culture. These are the words Americans use all the time at parties, at work, with friends. And here's the thing, textbooks never teach them.
I believe it. Because I've been studying English for years, and I never heard the words I'm about to learn today.
All right, let's start with the first one. Leo, imagine it's Sunday morning in autumn. The weather is cool, maybe a little chilly. You drive to a big stadium parking lot. And all around you, people have their car trunks open. They've got grills going, cooking hamburgers and hot dogs. They have coolers with drinks, folding chairs, maybe a football to toss around. This whole thing is happening before the game even starts. What do you call that?
I've seen that in movies. Is it tailgate?
Bingo. That's exactly it. Tailgating. And the verb is to tailgate.
Okay, but I have to ask, is it the same word as when you drive too close to someone's car? That's also tailgating, right?
Great question. Yes, it's the exact same word. But in sports culture, tailgate means something completely different. When you tailgate, you're having a party in a parking lot before a game. It's usually from the back of a pickup truck or an SUV with the tailgate. That's the door that folds down on a truck, open. People eat, drink, play music, throw football around. For many Americans, tailgating is actually more fun than the game itself.
Wait, more fun than the game?
I know it sounds crazy, but think about it. Tailgating is social. You're with your friends, you're relaxed, you're eating good food. For some people, the game is just the excuse to tailgate.
All right, so how do I use this? Give me an example.
Sure, you could say, we tailgated for 3 hours before the game. Or, are you going to tailgate this Saturday? Also very common, I love tailgating.
Okay, we tailgated for 3 hours before the game. That sounds natural.
It does. Now, here's a mistake I hear a lot from learners. Some people say, we did tailgate or we made a tailgate party. In English, we don't say those. The verb is simply to tailgate, so we tailgated is perfect. Also, don't say the tailgate party. It is correct grammatically, but it sounds very formal. Just say tailgate is a verb. We tailgated. Short and natural.
Got it. So if someone asks me, what did you do before the game? I say, oh, we tailgated, not we had a tailgate party.
Exactly. Now, learners from Spanish-speaking backgrounds, and this affects some Chinese learners too, often say we made a tailgate or we did tailgate. In English, we don't make or do a tailgate, you just tailgate. It's a verb. So practice that. We tailgated. Say it with me, Leo.
We tailgated.
Perfect. Now, let me give you a second example. Imagine you're talking to a coworker who is a big sports fan. You want to invite them to hang out before a game. You say, hey, we're tailgating at the stadium parking lot at 10. You should come. That's natural American English.
Okay, I love this. But I'm curious, do people tailgate for every sport, like soccer, basketball?
Great question. Tailgating is most common for American football, which happens on Sundays during autumn. Also for college football, that's huge for tailgating. Baseball has some tailgating, but less. Basketball? Almost never. The culture is really tied to football.
So if I say we tailgated before the basketball game, that sounds weird.
It would sound a little off to a native speaker, yes. Basketball games are in indoor arenas, usually in cities. There's no parking lot culture, so stick to football.
Good to know. All right, let me try to use this naturally. I'm talking to my American friend, and I want to sound cool. I say, hey, are you tailgating this Sunday?
Perfect. That sounds exactly like something a native speaker would say. Now, let's move to our second phrase, and this one is about commitment.
Commitment? Sounds serious.
It is. In American sports culture, nothing says I'm a real fan quite like having season tickets.
Season tickets. I've heard that, but what does it mean exactly?
Season tickets are tickets to every single home game for a whole season. So instead of buying a ticket for one game, you buy a package for all the games. For American football, that's 8 or 9 home games. For baseball, it's 81 home games.
81? That's a lot of baseball.
It is. So season tickets are expensive. They are also a status symbol. When someone says, I have season tickets, they are not just saying they like sports. They are saying, I am a dedicated fan. I have the money and the time to go to every game.
So it's like a badge of honor?
Exactly. In casual conversation, you might hear someone say, he's got season tickets to the Lakers. That sentence carries weight. It means this person is serious about basketball.
Okay, so how do I use this? Do I say I have season tickets for football?
Close, very close. But we usually say, I have season tickets to plus the team. For example, I have season tickets to the Cowboys. Or she has season tickets to the Yankees. If you say season tickets for football, it sounds like you're talking about a whole sport, not a specific team. Americans think of teams first, so practice that. I have season tickets to the Bears.
I have season tickets to the Bears.
Excellent. Now, here is a common mistake. Some learners say, I have tickets for the season. That is grammatically correct, but it sounds very unnatural. A native speaker would say, I have season tickets.
Season tickets is the phrase. It's a compound noun, one package, one idea. Also, learners from Chinese-speaking backgrounds sometimes say, I bought the season of tickets. That is not correct in English. Just say, season tickets, 2 words together.
Okay, so now I have a question for you, Leo. You're the learner here. Let's say you meet someone at a party and they say, I have season tickets to the Packers. What do you think about that person?
I think they're a big fan, they have money, they go to every game.
Exactly. And you can respond by saying, oh, that's awesome. How long have you had them? That is a natural follow-up question. Americans love talking about their season tickets. It's a conversation starter.
How long have you had them? Got it. Okay, so now I have 2 phrases. Tailgate and season tickets. What's the third one?
This one will really surprise you. It's called Fantasy League.
Fantasy league? Like imaginary sports? Like make-believe?
That's exactly what my Spanish-speaking students say at first. They hear fantasy and they think of unicorns and fairy tales, but in American sports culture, Fantasy League is very, very real.
Okay, so what is it?
Fantasy League is a game where you create your own virtual team of real players. You earn points based on how those players perform in actual games. So if your quarterback throws a touchdown in real life, you get points in your fantasy league.
Wait, so I'm competing against other people with my made-up team?
Exactly. Millions of Americans play fantasy football every year for the entire season. And here's the key cultural point. When Americans say my fantasy team, they are not talking about their imagination. They are talking about a serious competition.
Okay, so I need to be careful with this word. Because if I just say fantasy alone, people might think I'm talking about something else.
Right. For example, if you say I have a fantasy about football, that sounds completely different. That sounds like a daydream or something personal. But if you say my fantasy team is doing well this year, every American knows exactly what you mean.
S2.
Good eye. So Fantasy League is the overall game. Fantasy team is your specific group of players. So you say I'm in a fantasy league, or my fantasy team is winning. Both are natural.
I'm in a fantasy league. My fantasy team is winning. Okay.
Let's add one more thing. In casual conversation, you might hear people argue about fantasy sports. They say things like, I can't believe you traded my player, or my quarterback is injured, my season is over. It's very emotional and very real to them.
So if I want to join a conversation at work, I can say, how's your fantasy team doing?
Perfect. That is the single best question to ask American coworkers during football season. It shows you understand the culture and you're interested.
All right, but I have one more question. I've heard the word fantasy in other contexts, like romance or fiction. How do I make sure people know I'm talking about sports?
Context is everything. If you're at a sports bar and you say I'm in a league, people know you mean fantasy league. If you're at work and you say my team is playing this week, they know you mean your fantasy team. Just use the full phrase fantasy league or fantasy team when you're first mentioning it, and after that you can just say my team, and people will understand.
That's a great tip. So don't be afraid to say fantasy, but say it with sports context.
Exactly. Now let's do a quick recap. What are our three phrases?
Tailgate, the party before the game. Season tickets, tickets to every game. And Fantasy League, the virtual game with real players.
Perfect summary. Now I want to give you all a challenge. After this episode, I want you to use one of these phrases today, even if you're just talking to yourself. Say, I tailgated this weekend, or my fantasy team is winning. Practice the sound of it.
And if you're watching this on YouTube or listening on a podcast app, write your sentence in the comments. Maya will correct you.
I will. That's a promise. Now, before we go, let me give you one more cultural insight. Many learners from Arabic-speaking backgrounds have told me they were confused by Fantasy League because in their culture, the word fantasy is almost never used in a sports context. So if you're from that background, just remember, in American English, Fantasy League is a normal, everyday phrase. Nothing magical about it.
All right, Maya, I think I'm ready to talk sports like a native now.
I think you are too. And remember, the goal here is not perfect grammar. The goal is to sound like a real person, having a real conversation. These three phrases will take you from textbook English to natural English instantly.
Speak like a native. New episode every day. If you like this, subscribe and hit the bell. And Maya, I have a question for next time.
What's that?
Can we talk about what to say at a tailgate? Like actual small talk phrases?
Great idea. That's next time. For now, practice these three phrases, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Bye, everyone.